Hello, everyone. It is 12 o'clock, so we're going to get our webinar started. Thank you all for joining us for Harmony Recovery's professional webinar series today. I'm Karen Ness, and I am the Business Development Director at Harmony. Our mission at Harmony has always been to provide compassionate, evidence-based care, and through this series, we hope to extend that mission by fostering collaboration and continued education among professionals in our field. Together, we can make a lasting impact on the recovery community.
Harmony is home. I love telling people welcome home. I said, you can stop running. This is a place of healing, compassion. It's a magical mountain. It truly is.
Harmony has that legacy and that history of serving our population for 55 plus years. And so I'm just in awe of wow, we really have touched so many lives.
There's a quick intimacy that happens when you come to Harmony, and that quick intimacy allows me to feel a sense of community that has been lacking in my life thus far.
When I came here to Harmony, I had a very low self-worth. I remember having this realization of, wow, this is the first time in my life where I felt loved, where I felt heard. I felt I could be totally vulnerable and be loved regardless.
I often ask my clients, when did you stop dancing? Dancing, singing, just being who you are. And that's one of my favorite things I teach here is people to dance again.
There is this interesting thing that happens for most people in treatment, and they turn the corner. There's a light in their eyes where it's like, I can do this, and I don't have to go through these struggles by myself.
Recovery is a journey, so we want to make sure that not only are we with you in the starting point, but also when you discharge, that you're connected with a beautiful alumni community and people that can, hold your hand through this process. That is something that we're here for.
When we look at addiction treatment, we recognize clients need different levels of care as they move through the process of recovery. Having a continuum of care, having many resources available to our clients allows for their journey to be extended to meet their needs as they're experiencing day-to-day stressors with the safety of an All Health Network outpatient services.
All right, thanks so much for watching that video with us. So for today's presentation, we will be presenting mental health and wellness for music industry professionals, presented by Carla Felts, clinical social worker. So for those of you that are new to Harmony, we are one of the longest standing addiction treatment centers in Colorado. We are located on 34 acres in Estes Park, Colorado. We've been serving people over 56 years, treating substance use disorder, starting with medical detox all the way through intensive outpatient programming. Our facility has a 76-bed residential program available. We've got a full medical detox. We also offer virtual intensive outpatient programming in the morning and in the evenings. We include family support and education services, as well as alumni support services. So Harmony offers individualized, gender-specific treatment. We've got 24-hour attention provided by highly skilled staff. We offer comprehensive clinical, medical, and spiritual support for adults 18 years of age and up, all genders. We are in network with most commercial insurances, and recently started accepting Medicaid as well. If you haven't been to Harmony and you're interested in coming up and tour, please reach out to me directly, and I'd be more than happy to connect you to our clinical staff and case managers, and you can come and check out our beautiful facility and get to know Harmony a little bit better. So some things to know for today's webinar. This webinar is being recorded and will be accessible on our website. CEU will be emailed individually. Attendees must be involved for 45 minutes to receive the CEU. Please complete the survey. It is not required to receive the CEU. However, we would love to hear your feedback. If you have any questions about Harmony's programming, any questions about admissions, please reach out to me at kkness@harmonyrecovery.org. Or you can also call our admissions direct line, which is 970-340-2228, and visit harmonyrecovery.org to learn more about Harmony. So let's get started with today's presenter. So Carla Felts is a licensed clinical social worker. She specializes in trauma and addiction. She began her mental health career in the U.S. Army, first serving in the Corps of Engineers during Desert Storm before transferring to the Medical Corps as a behavioral health specialist. After her service, she earned her MSW with honors from USC. She's worked with the VA, treatment facilities, nonprofits, and private practice, and now serves with Harmony Recovery and Backline Care, supporting artists, musicians, and touring professionals. She's married to a tour manager. She brings both clinical expertise and personal insight to her work. Carla also consults and speaks nationally on trauma, recovery, and mental health in the music industry. So please help me welcome Carla Felts.
I was muted. Thanks, everybody. I'll share my screen now. Thanks, Karen, too, for the introduction. I was really grateful that people were interested in seeing and being presented on about music industry. This is a topic close to my heart, as I have been married to my husband Scott for over about 13 years, and so I like to say I'm married into the industry. But I hope to shed some light and more clear light on the challenges that faced by those that are in this glamorous lifestyle and work. Believe me, it's not as glamorous as it may sound. So this is a quote that my husband loves and shared with me when we were first dating, and when I asked about him being in the music industry. This is by Hunter S. Thompson, for those of you that are familiar with him. But the music business is a cruel and shallow money trench, a long plastic hallway where thieves and pimps run free and good men die like dogs. And there's also a negative side. This is pretty much the attitude that my husband shared about it, and just about how exhausting it can be related to the personalities and pressures that are put on those that are in the industry due to potential exploitation and frankly, just no work-life balance. When we mean what I'm going to be speaking about music industry, more or less is those that are working in it, not just performers and musicians. There's over 2 million who are employed in this industry in the United States. And on top of performing artists and their musicians, there's road crews and production and venue staff and promoters and attorneys and publishers and all alike. And it's important to know that, because that adds to the pressures of those that are in it about supporting each other in this way. So two main branches are going to really fund and has brought revenue into the industry. And it's important to mention because it's that pressure about funding streams that cycles down to those that work in it. So recording and live music have been the two main branches that have been known for income purposes in the industry. What happened at the turn of the century, though, our century, the 2000s, due to streaming and other issues related to technology, there was a dive in record sales and an increase in revenue from touring. And as a result, there was something that came out as a 360 agreement, since artists were no longer making money from touring. What it is that in a 360 deal, the labels would offer to front everything, the tours and the merchandise and everything else, in return for getting revenue back from things that normally would be just the artist's income. And as a result, that made artists and performers more dependent on touring as a form of income, which has come to find has been very hard on their mental health. So in 2019, MIRA, Music Industry and Research Association, came out with this, and this is before COVID. 50% of the industry professionals were reporting depression, and that's double of what the general adult population. 12% reported suicidal thoughts, nearly 4 times the general pop, and 73% anxiety. And that year we lost 8 influential and loved artists from suicide, overdose, and in one case, gang violence. Following COVID, now March 14, 2020 was a day that was, their D-Day. That was when Live Nation shut down due to the COVID shutdown, and those 2 million people found themselves unemployed and not knowing what was going to happen. This was their identity. As my husband working 30 years in it, not knowing what's going to happen, what can you do? So this study, joint study by University of London and Emory, found that following COVID, 70% of the industry reported battling anxiety and depression. And the male suicide rate was 20% higher than general pop. But look at the female suicide rate, 69% higher than the average woman in general population outside of music industry. That's staggering. SAMHSA also was looking at this and found that 13% of the entire industry workers, those working in and out of touring, had substance use disorder. And that's the 3rd highest rate among industries studied by Department of Labor. 14% were reporting using illicit drugs in the last 30 days. But look at what's happening with touring. 3 out of 4 touring professionals on the road report having active substance use disorder. This is not unusual or different than these other niche and high stress occupations. I'm a combat veteran, and I'm very familiar with the culture of the military. I acted as a co-responder. I'm very familiar with the culture of first responders and the high needs there. I find music industry right up there with it, and those that work in music industry and those that work to support them also. And the importance of understanding is cultural competency. There is a culture in music industry due to the close-knit, the amount of time they're living together and how different their industry is from others. What makes it is unpredictability. They don't know what's going to be happening from one tour to the next or when they're going to have a tour. There's extreme working conditions, very long hours, 19-hour days, 5 days in a row, not uncommon on the tour, and extreme weather conditions and living conditions. Prolonged days, as I said, and tours up to, could be up to a year being away from home. Vulnerability and sensitization versus, tolerance and resilience. People who have more typical occupations have more access to things that bring them resilience and support. So give you an example. You can look at these words and these phrases, and you can see that in many people experience this in other aspects of life. But in touring, they're feeling this all the time, every day. As in any, and when I work with first responders as well, and veterans, we talk about resilience and building that, the ability to bounce back. Well, there's ways of doing that. And we focus on energy, for example, right? Our ability to renew our physical energy and our as well as our mental. And what that does, we have the ability to do that. Maybe I'll go to the gym. Maybe I'll take a class to stimulate myself. But when you're on the road, you don't have that luxury. Future focus, knowing where you want to go and how to get there. There's not a lot of autonomy and/or when you're on the road, you're doing everything and you're answering to people that really have a say, and we'll get into that, if I have a lot of control over your work. Inner drive, love to have that, right? We want that motivation, we want to move up, we want to have that motivation just to grow. Well, there's not a lot of room to grow in certain levels of touring, especially if you're on the road a lot, and especially if you're a woman, frankly, and we'll talk more about that. Flexible thinking, obviously that is a resiliency skill, right? However, when you are in very fast changing and stressful environments, that becomes also a luxury that you do not have or cannot afford due to time constraints. And people become very black and white in their thinking. And as we know, long-term black and white thinking leads to higher stress and anxiety. And one of the main factors and protective factors, as we all know, for resiliency is strong relationships. And however, there's always that misconception in certain industries, military, responders, music, that resilient people are fiercely independent. We all know that's not true. We have positive relationships that are supportive, and we have the emotional intelligence, we hope, to value them so we can work with them and maintain them. However, in the industry, and much of like I was talking about first responders and military, music industry is one of those where there's the highest stress in relationships, according to this 2024 study by the CDC, double of that of which is the national average. So a lot of failed marriages and a lot of separation, which causes a lot of grief, loss, and lack of support. And this is due to occupational challenges. Sustaining healthy connections with coworkers, very difficult. Coworkers change every tour. Every tour may have different expectations because there may be a different leadership or different management. There's also living conditions, living on a bus. My husband did it for a year with people half his age. That was very bumpy, and 8 to 10 people on one bus. Not the best food, and definitely lack of sleep. And he definitely didn't have a lot of support. He didn't keep up on his, medical wellness as well as his mental health or spiritual aspects of himself. And that was very stressful. So the impacts on the individual is much like impacts on anyone that has a lot of stress in their life or trauma. And there's the loneliness and isolation, with the depression, the substance abuse, the 4 the very poor physical health due to, weight gain, poor diet, increased stress. But the things I really want to highlight is this sexual harassment or bullying, especially if you're a woman. I was also a woman in the military. I was the only woman in the entire battalion at one point when I was in the Corps of Engineers. And I had to overcompensate. I had to work twice as hard as everybody else. And believe me, I did not complain. If I did, I was felt that I would be labeled as not keeping up or not hacking it. And that can lead to sustaining more abuse that can be traumatizing. Thus, that 69% suicide rate. Also, there are dangers on the road. We now have mass shootings. And I was in one with my husband at an event, and while he was on tour in 2021, and there was a near miss at the Baclan Theater in France. So this is also a stressor on them, as well as financial insecurities. They're 1099 workers, they're gig workers. There's no job security there. And of course, we talked about failing relationships at home. The impacts at home are just as challenging. There's an overwhelm by partners taking on roles that they didn't have to, take on when their partner was there. And there's also the relationship insecurity, feeling disconnected for long periods of time. Infidelity, it happens. Fear of a partner's safety, as we talked about. But also, if there's kids involved, there's maladjustment. Very similar traits as those that are military families. There's a lot of separation anxiety, financial stress, again, very dependent on their touring, if there is a tour. But also lack of support at home, much like military families. There is a community in music industry. There's been more connection on us, like through social media, but not having your family or extended family and friends understand what you're going through is also a tough thing. So when we're trying to build resiliency, we're going to look at how we do that through these core areas. Physical, trying to get people to engage in their physical fitness. How do you do that on the road? Intellectually, how do you keep people stimulated and feeling like they're growing? Emotional, keeping connected to their self and to their values. That's difficult too when you're having 19-hour days and you're being disconnected from your family. Social, connecting again with others, and that spiritual aspect, leaning into that of which gives you strength and hope, carving that out. Before I get into this, I just want to check in if there's any questions so far. Okay, so I want to talk about some survival tips. And we talked to not only those that are on tour if they're already speaking to someone like me, but also their families about planning it ahead. This is often spoken about with those that serve in the military too, as well as first responders. You have to make a plan to stay connected in advance. It will not happen otherwise on its own. And that's not only to family, but to your friends, and also to self. Keeping a commitment to hobbies and interests, however you can creatively. Routine is important, not only on the road, but also at home. So prioritizing that helps to also train the body for resiliency, to understand sleep, to understand when it's going to be able to relax or move. Creative use of technology. We all have Facebook and WhatsApp and in other ways. There's also apps that families can communicate while on tour or to know where their family member is, and that's helpful. Keeping a home routine, again, benefits the person on the road so they know what's going on and can check in and feel part of it. But also that's important, keeping each other informed of the big and little stuff. Even though that's hard to do, it keeps you still connected. And planning those special events with loved ones while they're on tour, something to look forward to by all parties. But also planning to meet, trying to make arrangements to meet someone out on the road can be a very important morale booster. Other tips is staying flexible, of course, mentally, as well as physically, staying as fit as we can, practicing healthy communication skills that can be learned ahead of time. There's supports out there in the music industry that helps teach that. Prioritizing individual self-care, and that means mental health, but also means medical nutrition, and avoiding mood-altering substances when possible. Taking advantage of telehealth services, that can be a challenge these days because of the fact that these folks they're not in the same city, or maybe not in the same state one day to the next. And as we know, there's licensing issues with providers. However, we're trying to have interstate compacts where we can. But also, again, learning from every tour and how to prepare for the next one is also important. Keeping flexible in that way and adaptive. Now we want to talk about reentry. There's an eventual coming home. And much again, like the military, this is a stressor. And it's a stressor not only by the person coming home, not knowing what has changed for them, or the things that they're going to have to maybe do as soon as they hit the door, what they fear, but also by the person who's waiting for them. They don't know what they're getting. And there's a lot of dysregulation, as you can imagine. So what we want to do is talk about that in advance. There's something called a 3-day rule when anyone's coming off tour, not only for the person coming home, but for the rest of the family too, that we want to get into our rituals, expectations about what it's like when someone comes home, what they're going to be doing during that 3 days that helps them regulate and stay, as well as co-regulating with the people around them, reacclimating to their roles and routines. It's also protecting the family and individual time to get to know each other again. And also it's taking note of any maladaptive strategies that was used, whether that was substance use or scrolling or whatever else was kind of going on. Take note of that with each other and try to get back on track. And how you can do that is contemplate maybe having a physical check-in, but it's also a mental health. And family or couples counseling is not a bad way, even if things aren't falling apart, just to keep things resilient. Now, value conflicts is common in any time, not only between people and family members, but for maybe the person on tour and the industry itself. It could be going against things that are very challenging, with them, and that has to be evaluated. I'm hearing more, even in this times where there's some political polarization, they're feeling that on tour, and that can be difficult. So an individual's relationship between their professional and family and social roles are often at risk of compromising another value that they hold. And we don't do that. We don't sacrifice or give up a value for another. When we do, we feel resentment, we feel stuck, we get depressed. So what we try to ask people is not give things up for each other, but to recalibrate and find balance. I want to bring this up first, though, before I get into something. And that is key barriers to remember. These, if you're going to be helping people in this industry, you have to understand that there's pressure from the management and the label for people to stay touring, even if they are not wanting to. especially the artists. There's contracts. They make money off the tours. Pressure experienced by the artists to tour is not only that, but supporting those that they employ. They actually care about the people around them. They start building relationships themselves. Pressure by crew and production to tour, financial uncertainty. This is the only way they can make money. Well, on all sides, image and reputation is so important for you to remember, because the image of the artist, if they're in treatment, that's why privacy and confidentiality is so important. But also reputation for the support folks. They are work at will. And if there's a rumor or if there's anything like that that gets out there, they may not be pulled on tour. But also, it's important to know trust. I've had artists who are grateful and other people, and they're getting ready to go on a podcast or something, and they want to talk about me or mention me by name. They think they're going to promote me. I ask them not to. I appreciate the being anonymous in order to secure people's trust. I've been asked to speak in more public forums, and I've asked not to do that too, because I don't want it ever to be a question what my loyalties are and what I'm going to be keeping private. So getting back in values and value conflicts, it's important for folks to evaluate this when they come off tour. Are they staying aligned with themselves? This was my husband's after being gone over nearly a year. And he was in line with being in his career and financial, but family, nope. And let me tell you, he's an autonomous person. He was fearful that I was going to tell him he needed to come off the road and suggest it. And what we did was we brought balance. We found what was getting in the way of that, and we set boundaries around it. And we made an action plan about how he can be more present, not necessarily home, and to keep those connections alive. We'll go through some resources, important, and most people are going to get, if you request the slides, these will be in the slides, because I want to leave some time for some questions as well. I kind of went through this a little faster than I expected, but to keep it open. Music Cares Foundation is a nonprofit organization. Many people are familiar with it. They are really known for promoting recovery in the industry. There's other things also too for stagehands, and like Roadie Clinic is a roadie advocacy group, and they work with families as well as the roadies and provide support groups and what have you. Backline.care, an organization I'm familiar with, is a nonprofit. It was founded before COVID here in Colorado. Family members from Green Sky were responsible for bringing this up. And it started very grassroots with just a few clinicians, and it now has over 1,200 independent contracted licensed providers and coaches. Case management is extremely top-notch, as well as non-licensed wellness providers as well. And there's the website. Other resources, artists are now getting more involved, and that's to sustain. They felt responsible, for their people again, and felt more privileged in that way, especially for their folks. And Busy Heads Project, it was founded by Noah Kahan, who had his own mental health journey, and we're thankful for that. He has this foundation. He's able to fund it for those that can't afford access. And other artists and labels are valuing it too, because frankly, it's cost effective. If you can keep people resilient, they're more likely to be on tour, and we're not going to have these tragedies. Many of these tours are now adding a mental health wellness support as a line item in their budgets on tour. So if your ticket price seems to go up a little bit, it's not just for Live Nation. It's to help support the wellness of those that bring the magic to you. Industry unions and advocacy groups have also been talking about safety and improving safety and working conditions. So the culture is slowly changing, but it is changing. There's going to be a list here of other financial and medical assistance, which is so helpful. Again, it's not like anyone on these tours have benefit packages. Not happening. And again, there's also advocacy groups, as well as support for women in the industry. I'm a big proponent for that, as my experience in the military showed. And it's nice to know that there are these advocacy and support groups for them as well. Again, I'm going to make a plug for backline.care. If you go to their website and you're a clinician, you're interested in also helping those that serve the industry, go to their website. There are links on how you can sign up and be considered. And now I'll just leave it up for questions.
Well, thanks so much for that presentation, Carla. That was amazing. If anyone has any questions, I don't think I see anything in the chat. But obviously you can reach out to Carla as well via email if something comes up after the webinar ends. Yeah, so I see just thank yous. It was a great webinar. Thanks so much. So if you guys don't have any questions, we just want to thank you all so much for joining us today. And just keep an eye out for your CEUs being sent to you individually, and keep an eye out for more webinars we have coming up. So thank you guys so much for attending today. Take care.